This episode covers some adult-themed material in nature. If you have young ones around, I'd pop in my earbuds or listen to this when you are by yourself. Listener discretion is advised. Did you worry that you were going to lose me? Or how did you feel about that?
I think that I think because my body had been through so much, I honestly can't say that I wondered if you were going to turn to something. Never did it cross my mind that you would go to somebody physically, but it made me at times wonder if it would turn to like porn or something because of that, because I was fighting my own battles of trying to figure out, this is the new body I have. How do I handle this? It's nothing what I'm used to. I can't make you happy. And at that time, I think I just had so many things going on that I don't know that I processed that. I would say that at times I did worry about that.
This week on Marriage, Life, and More, we're going to talk about some more of Michelle and I's testimony and some things that we've went through here in the past. We're going to get back into that right after this. Welcome to Marriage, Life, and More podcast. I'm Daniel Moore, and sitting over here with me this week, I've got my beautiful co-host, Michelle, my wife, sitting over here.
Hey.
And we are back with another episode. This is a podcast about marriage, Bible, and book studies, and occasionally we have some people on here to interview, and they share their inspiring stories. Thank you guys for joining us this week. If not familiar with our show, you can check out our website at www.marriagelifeandmore.com for our platforms. Our YouTube and Rumble links are there. We're also on the Christian podcasting app Edify. We're also on your Alexa and Google smart devices. You can also visit us on social, on Facebook and Instagram at CTGap Online. And if you are a fan of our show, we just ask that you please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And feel free to leave a comment on our platforms. Give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. And we'd be thankful to you for helping us out with that and helping this podcast to grow and reach people that need to hear these episodes. And we just be eternally grateful to you for doing that. Well, we are back again with another marriage episode. And as we talked about a little bit as we were going through our extensive series that we just finished up, we told you that Michelle and I had a little bit more to our testimony. And so we're going to go ahead and pick that back up this week. And we're going to share more of our testimony here on Marriage, Life, and More.
That God has a purpose for your pain, a reason for your struggle, and a reward for your faithfulness, that you trust Him and never give up? Well, that's exactly where I was at back in 2018. And as I go through this story, and Dan will probably at some point interject and say and add a few things, since I don't always remember everything. But in 2018, somewhere in the 1st of August, I had a radical hysterectomy by laparoscopic. And that was just a normal surgery. Stayed the night at the hospital. Went home the next day. About 10 days later, we were getting ready to surprise a couple from church that was getting ready to move. And we were having a going away party on a Saturday morning. Well, Friday night, I had woke up in the middle of the night with my arm hurting, which is really weird because I can tolerate a lot of pain. So with that arm hurting, it was not only hurting, but there was a lump there. And it was kind of hot to touch, but, I was like, I got too much going on to really think about this right now. So we went through the going away party. And mind you, I'm still recovering from my hysterectomy. We went through the day. We went to Springfield, helped our daughter move. I did not lift anything. My mom and my husband made sure of that. She was moving back in her dorm in Evangel in Springfield. So as we were driving back, I finally realized, okay, I can't eat. This is really, really hurting. So something's seriously wrong. I happen to have a friend who's a nurse practitioner, so I messaged her, and she's like, more than likely it's a blood clot. They'll give you heparin. You get to go home. So I didn't really get to eat. So Dan was waiting to eat. So we dropped my mom off, and we went down to the hospital. And actually, there's two different hospitals. We have one that's here in our local town that's kind of smaller, and the bigger sisterhood would be the main one up in another town. So we chose to go to the small one because, granted, I was just ready to hook me an IV up and give me heparin so we can go to Gringo's to get that burrito. That's what we just kept talking about. It's like, oh, we're starving. So I go in and they give me an IV immediately. So obviously they kind of know what's going on. And I go back and they're looking at the ultrasound. And back at that time, Daniel actually worked 2 jobs. He did a paper route in the morning that would cost him to get up at, 3:34?
Yeah, about 3:50 or so in the morning.
So he always had to do it. He didn't have a backup. So no matter what, he was always had to be gone. So I want to say, what time was that? Like 8:30, 9 o'clock?
At least, yeah. It was pretty late in the evening.
So I went back and I actually got a wonderful, I call her my little angel because she would not give up. They could not find the blood clot in my arm. So eventually she went up to my neck and realized that I had a blood clot in my jugular, which is not very normal at all. And I could tell by the way she was acting, it was probably more than what she suspected. And so they sent me back to the room, and once we got in the room, they asked me if I had issues with my kidney. And, of course, we're like, no. And before then, I've been healthy. I've not really had many surgeries. I've actually done really well, knock on wood. But they came back in, and that's when they said, we're going to have to transport you to the other hospital because you have a massive blood clot in your jugular. And it was to the point where if I hadn't went in, within a couple hours, it was almost completely closed off, or it could have traveled to kill me. So I'm nervous. My husband has to leave because he has to go and do the paper out. And so my mom follows the ambulance to Joplin. We get up there. Of course, you know how it is when you go to the hospital. You're all over the place, and nurses, everybody's coming in asking you questions, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't get much sleep. So not only did my husband do a paper route, but he was supposed to be there for the drums on Sunday morning praise and worship. So he did the paper route, and then he came to the hospital. And of course, our church prayed for us, and we are so thankful for that. But they were trying to figure out what was going on and why my kidney numbers were so high. And by then,
they had taken a blood test, and they didn't realize at that point your numbers were out of whack.
Right. And, I'm not going to go through a whole lot of details, but eventually they figured out, they were shooting me with heparin, like a lot of heparin. And by then, obviously, if you have a blood clot on one side, they can only take blood from the other side. So I had pokes everywhere, and my arms were completely bruised. In the meantime, they found out that when I had the surgery for my hysterectomy, that the tool had nicked my ureter, and all the stuff going through was going in my body. So they did an emergency surgery and placed, it was called a ureteral stent. Is that placement stent? Something like that.
Yep.
And so I came back out of surgery, and obviously, by then I have high anxiety because of multiple different things that had happened there at the hospital. And they eventually released me to come home. So I came home. And just FYI, I don't know about you, but anytime I have surgery and I get super sick from the anesthesia. And when I say super sick, I'm throwing up. I hate it. Doesn't matter if they give you anything, I'm still sick. So I go on, I'm still recovering from the big surgery. And then once I go, after 6 weeks, I go back to work. I then have another surgery to have the stent removed. And then by then, everybody's like, hey, you're great. Everybody's doing good. Your body's going to have to adjust because on the hysterectomy, they took everything. So my body's going to have to adjust for all that. Well, I got extremely sick. I think within 6 weeks, I was super, super sick. And I could not figure out what was going on with me. Kept calling the doctor that did the stent. And I'm like, something's not right. My right side down in the you could tell it was my kidney. I could tell
You had a lot of pain.
Yes.
Also.
And then it got to the point where they wouldn't listen to me because they were like, hey, she's recovering, 2 surgeries. And then we had the surgery for the pullout. So technically 3. So I was like, okay, Lord, you're going to have to open a door for this. Well, then Dan started getting really frustrated because I came home one day from work and I was so sick. And he finally called up there and he's like, you're going to do something about this. So again, they did an ultrasound and my sweet little angel, the same one that found my blood clot, is the same one that found out. She just looked straight at me and she's like, I don't have the best news. And, obviously she can't tell me anything. So, but she kept reassuring me everything was going to be fine. I left there and then they called us. I was going to be back in emergency surgery. And that's because my kidney was completely blocked. When he pulled the stent out, he pulled it too early, which caused my ureter to completely block off right after the surgery. So I went multiple weeks with my kidney dying and shrinking. And so we went in for the surgery. And by then, this is my 4th surgery. And I can tell you, Dan will tell you, I was starting to have a little bit of anxiety. And I went in, I was put out. Hence, when I came to, all I remember hearing the nurse saying it didn't work. And I was like, what? And I know I started crying. And then Dan came in and I'll let you fill them in of exactly what he said because I wasn't there.
Yeah. So when he came to me to talk to me, basically what had happened was the scar tissue from where the nick was at had, like she said, had closed off the ureter completely. And at that point, it pretty much had kicked the kidney into 4th stage kidney disease. And so not only was there the issue of trying to get this kidney back opened up so that it could start functioning correctly, but you were at risk of losing your kidney. We were right there. If something did not get done, the kidney was going to die. And so it was kind of a race against time at the same time. Well, when the doctor came out after the surgery procedure, he told me, he said, I don't have good news. He said, we went back in there to try to reinsert the stent. And he said, it's too tight. It's too closed off in there. The scar tissue has just completely closed that ureter off. And he said, we were not successful in getting that back in there. And he said, so that pretty much just leaves with one option. We're going to have to get her into surgery somewhere. And that's not something that I do. He said, we're going to have to get her to a surgical center. And so, of course, I asked him for his advice. I'm like, well, where do we need to go? And he said, well, there's only 2 places. He said, there's KU, which is Kansas University Medical Center, or we could go to Springfield, Missouri. He said they had a unit up there that had a surgeon that could perform that type of surgery. And so I just flat out asked the doctor, I said, well, if it was your wife, where would you take her? And he said, I would definitely take her to KU. He said, that's exactly where I would go. And I said, well, that's what we need to do. And so when you came out of surgery, as you said, you kind of had heard a little bit, but you didn't know everything, the details. And so they left it up to me to tell you the bad news. And I will say, from a husband's aspect on the whole thing, it was hard for me to say that day, because I knew it was going. She had been in so much pain, and I'd been sitting there watching you, just put up with that and deal with it, the tears, the frustration from everything, because it wasn't getting any better. We weren't getting very good answers from the hospital, really. And that really works on a spouse. I mean, if you truly love your spouse and you really, especially from a husband's aspect of it, I felt like, I'm supposed to help, to take care of you. And I was helpless pretty much.
Yeah.
There just wasn't much that I could do. And we were kind of in the hands of the hospital and the surgeons at that point. And as you described, that stuff goes so slow.
Yeah.
It's just like there's no urgency until all of a sudden they see, oh, there is an urgency, and then it's almost too late. So we were kind of, really fighting a time schedule at this point. And so I did tell you, and it upset you tremendously.
Yes.
I remember that ride home was brutal, because I just felt so bad. I didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. I mean, it was just completely out of our hands. All we could do at that point was leave it in God's hands. And so then we had to go ahead and try to get the next surgery set up. So you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah. So the first doctor, when you have specialty cases like this, the doctors can choose whether they take you or not. So the first doctor that they referred me to would not take my case. And
it took him 2 weeks to give us an answer?
Yes.
I mean, here we are fighting time already.
It was brutal.
And we were calling and calling, like, has he gave an answer yet? Does he know? Does he know?
And I think God just really had a plan in that for us to meet our doctor, who was amazing. The second doctor that they sent it to, he did accept it, and he got us in pretty quick. Knowing what happened, he's like, let's make an appointment, let's come up. So we drove up to Kansas City, and we get in there and we meet him, and he's like, I can't even believe you're walking. And he's like, you must be able to tolerate pain, because anybody in this shape or form, there's no way. Well, as he's sitting there, telling us, hey, we need to get your kidney going. So their whole plan was to cut my back and insert a tube and have a drain tube in it. And we kind of look at him and we're like, we can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? And I'm like, I'm on a blood thinner. And he's like, what? So, that complicated things more. So he couldn't do anything at that point because he planned on doing it that day. He was like, we need to get that kidney going. And so he talked to us, and, this is around the holiday. So it was around coming up on Thanksgiving. And I think we went on a Thursday or Friday the week before. And he's like, I'm going to see if I can't work you in. He's like, I'm going to be gone, but I'm going to see if I can't work you in. Well, he did get us worked in. And I'm so thankful he didn't exactly tell me everything that he had to do. I knew it was going to be a long surgery. I know it was going to be more of an intense. It wasn't a laparoscopic, what I wanted done. Because of what has happened, they had to literally cut me like a T. And so that kind of worried me. And it worried me being out again and being sick. And he told me that the stent would be placed and I would come home with a catheter. And so I had what's called a pOAS hitch surgery. And again, I'm thankful he didn't tell me everything when we got in there because he gave me some nerve blocks and everything. And now let me tell you, the guy was young, late 30s,
Probably,
maybe?
yeah.
He's a good-looking guy. I mean, super good-looking guy, super nice. Every time we came back, I'm just going to insert this right quick. He literally talked about my family. He knew what my kids did, the boys in the military, Brooklyn in college. Like he was just a genuine, really nice guy. So he really made me at ease. So I went into surgery. And I know you were nervous. Ended up taking 4.5, 5 hours?
Yeah, it was close to 5 to 6 hour surgery. And
so I'm not going to bore you with the details of everything they had to do. But when I came out, the first day was great. Which was Thanksgiving, so I got to eat a little bit. But the second, third, and fourth day and fifth day was the sixth day. I was so sick, guys. I was so sick, and I was in pain. And if anybody's ever had to come home with a catheter, it is not a great thing to do, especially when you have to come home. What was it, 3 weeks?
Something like that, yeah.
It was horrible. Let me just say that. And the stent was there. So it's, it really wore on me. And I felt like every time I went to the doctor, something would happen. And so anxiety really worked high on me. And, Dan did a great job. But you never find yourself, and I'm going to be real here, you don't ever think that you're going to find yourself to where you cannot take care of yourself at all. And when I say it all, I mean it all. And
especially at a young age.
Yeah. And my husband did a great job. But, there's things that I never, ever expected for him to have to go through. And so we went through recovery. I had some things, I had to have some more testing done to get the catheter out. And then before all the surgery, our daughter, surprise, we're getting married. That was right before my surgery. But we're getting married in January, and that was in November. And we're like, just like, can we make the flowers? So we have all that going on top of that. And so we actually had our wedding. I think I got my stent out on a Tuesday, and the wedding was like Thursday or Friday. It was super close. In fact, when we went wedding dress shopping, I had to have a wheelchair. And so those things worked on me in my mind. And after coming out of that, and guys, I'm still fighting with the blood thinners myself. And nobody knows why I had a blood clot in the jugular. I was still having issues with my arm, and I don't know why. After 6 months of being on the blood thinner, I went off of it. Well, then my arm started hurting again. When they went to do a scan, they found another blood clot in my arm. So after I leave KU, I come back those 2 different separate times to get the catheter and the ureter out. I go back on a blood thinner because they found the blood clot. I then went to KU for cardiovascular so that they could figure out what was going on and what was causing the blood clots because they couldn't figure it out. And see, when I tell you that after having 5 surgeries within 6 months and being the doctor how many times?
Quite a few.
Your anxiety does work on you. I'm not one of those like, hey, whatever, let's go on. But it really, really wore on me. And I do want to read something that one of the things, I was surrounded by some amazing people. And I can remember Tuesday night before I had my surgery at the hospital up in Joplin, my mom was in the room with me again because Stan had to be gone. And I can remember just bawling, like scared to death. And granted, I still hadn't ate. So I want to tell you, I hadn't ate Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. And the form of a Gringo's bean burrito was stuck in my head. But that's okay. Once the surgery was done, I knew I got to eat. So that's all that mattered to me. But I had so many visitors that came up. And even on Thanksgiving Day, our kids came up. I I am just forever thankful for those people that literally, but I want to read you something that really encouraged me through this. And God puts people in your past to help you go along with this. But this is what was written to me. It says, Lord, nothing surprises you, but bumps in the road and these pop-up scares can take its toll. I ask you if you would breathe your peace into the room now. Surround her with your presence and may peace fall on her mind, her body, and her spirit. Keep her steady and allow favor to go before her and bring the right doctors, caregivers to her side. Settle her in your peace and grace. Jehovah Shema. I don't know if I said that. Shema? I say it right. You are there. Jehovah Shalom. Everything needed. You are her peace. Jehovah Rapha. You are Michelle's healer. Thank you, Lord, for her strength. Your portion will be more than enough. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will hold you with my victories in my right hand. Our waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, and through this day believing for healing, restoration, everything coming into order within your body. We have things for going for us being a child of the Most High that gives us our advantage to our battles. And I know you know, trust in your heart because you have believed it for a long time. But it's time like these we use what we know and we fight our battles differently. The enemy of God even uses our emotions, what we hear with our ears, what we just feel in general to see if we are really going to fight differently than someone else, perhaps even a lukewarm person of faith. But you, Michelle, are a strong, mighty warrior in Jesus, and you most certainly have what it takes to fight differently because you are his daughter. You have a calling on your life and gifts being used for his glory, and let God's voice be louder than any other one that speaks doubt, discouragement, and others into your spirit. We find peace and praise when others find worry and stress. The enemy and God, I hadn't forgot my faith. It was real and it was about to get real dirty because I'm a fighter, just like you are. And even if that meant being still and calm and having confidence, knowing God is fighting for me, that is exercising my faith on a crazy level. He gives us the strength to the weary and increases the power to the weak. Jesus, encourage her heart today and give her strength. Touch her arms, areas that were hurting, sensitive, and bothersome. You are concerned about everything that concerns Michelle. Thank you for caring for her and overseeing all that is going on around her. Keep all infections and unnecessary stuff at bay. Purify the kidneys, strengthen her function, and allow the fluid to flow normally. Take care of the little things today as well as the big things. Instill hope, healing, and restoration to the portion needed today. Be still and know that I am God. I can't tell you how many times I went back to read that. And a sweet friend wrote that to me. And as I was going through all that, but I'm so thankful for worship songs and the people that stood in with me, because you know what I fought comes into play in that future of a season of life that we had to handle and deal with.
Yeah. So at this point, you were still fighting the kidney disease because they weren't even sure if your kidney was going to rebound or not. And we can say now at this point, See, this is 7 years, something like that. It actually did get back to
A
stage 2. I mean, God came in and done a miraculous work so that that kidney was saved. But you're probably thinking, well, this is a testimony, and it's awesome what God has done here. But what's the rest of this story? So, the reason that Michelle and I decided to share this, she also has lymphedema in her arm and down her right side, and I think that was to do with the
blood clot.
The blood clots is pretty much there's a chain reaction here, several things, and that's something that she's going to have to deal with, probably for the rest of her life, unless God does a miraculous healing on that, which we're praying for, and we're believing that God's going to do that. But if any of you couples out there have ever been through a situation where there's been some kind of a severe sickness, an illness, or maybe it's been an accident that has caused some perilous in somebody's body, or those things that can happen sometimes. With Michelle's situation, and most women can identify with this, when she had the hysterectomy, and one thing we did mention, this all started because of migraines. For the most part.
I've had issues. Actually, it's cysts. I had cysts on my ovaries ever since I was 12 years old. And they just kept getting worse and worse, which then developed the migraines really, really bad. And it got to the point where we've tried everything and nothing would work. And it was just, it was horrible.
So this is where it went, and this is what ended up happening. And so in 2018, how old were you then?
Oh, gosh, you would ask me that.
Let me think here.
That was 7 years ago. I was 41.
Yeah, you'd been real early 40s. So
40 or 41, yeah.
When women go through those types of things, it messes with hormones.
Yes.
It messes with sex drive. It literally made her, it literally made you a different person.
It did.
I mean,
it changed me completely.
Just putting it bluntly, your life changed.
Yeah.
That day when that surgery had to take place. And because of some other medical situations that you had earlier in life, you couldn't have hormone treatments.
No, I can't. And because I was on a blood thinner, I couldn't take anything.
Right.
I mean, and you would never think that, but yeah.
And so here we are, still young in our marriage, in some ways in our sexual prime, I guess you could say. Yeah. We've had all of our kids. Obviously, there wasn't any issue with wanting more kids or any of that going on. But just the intimacy side of the marriage.
And all of our kids were out of the house then.
Yeah, and the relationship between us, it's like as married couple, that's one of the milestones you kind of look forward to is when you're empty nesters, and then you can really just focus on each other.
Yeah.
And what each other's needs are. You're not having to be distracted, being pulled this way and that way for this kid and that kid and whatever. And then here we are, right when all this takes place and the kids are moving out, they're getting married and all that kind of thing. And then this happens, and it pretty much just killed your sex drive. And so...
And every other kind of drive.
Yeah, because even with your energy levels and everything, it's just like you were constantly exhausted.
I was fighting it. And I still do.
And you still do to an extent now.
I do.
And so there's a lot of couples, and we know other couples personally right now that are going through the same battle, the same fight. And we've seen couples where it's made or break them. We've seen some that's not been able to deal with it. We've seen others that are working through it all, and they're allowing God to help them through that. But there was a pretty extended amount of time there where in a healthy marriage, we couldn't really please each other or do those types of things to an extent where we were both satisfied. And that was kind of a tough thing to walk through to an extent, because there was times that you would be frustrated because, you knew that as a wife, you knew the things that I needed, but yet you couldn't fulfill those.
No.
And there was times that I was frustrated because you couldn't fulfill the needs that I had. And although I knew why the situation was there, And I understood that. But a lot of times when you walk through things like that, it does make you question why. Sometimes, it's like, why God? Why did this have to happen to me? Why am I the one going through this situation? We start putting God through 20 questions and that kind of thing. And it's not usually just one-sided. There's both sides that have lots of questions. And, that's just a path that all of a sudden it was beyond the medical part now. We already had to walk that walk. We already had to go through all of that kind of thing to get you to at least a pretty healthy state, as healthy as you could be. And then here we are with a new battle. And we had already had all the marital issues in the past because, we've already talked about a lot of that. And so we were still kind of really in our rebuild stage to an extent. And we had moved we had come a long ways by then. But there was still, more things there was still further to go. And then all of a sudden this happens. And so I know during that time from your side of it, what was some of the emotions that you had to deal with during that time frame when all of a sudden you realized that your sex drive and, the need to fulfill the wifely duties and all that kind of thing, all of a sudden it seemed like you just didn't want to, just the different things that you went through there. What was those emotional roller coasters that you went through?
So many, because I couldn't do anything. It was very frustrating for me. There was times that I would try to hide and, we would go ahead and do something and then it hurt so bad that I would just cry. And then you felt bad because you're like, why'd you say that? So I was trying to keep the communication open, but, it's very frustrating when you as a person have been able to do something previously and all of a sudden you can't. And then when I say you can't, it's my whole body. It was not anything like, there's times your mind can be, but your body parts can do that. But there was nothing. Like, there's times I'm like, I could care less. Like, it doesn't even, I can go months without even thinking about it. I mean, and honestly, I mean, my body totally changed. And I mean, I think felt like I let you down a lot. But I mean, how did it make you feel?
I had to do a lot of praying. I will say that because I knew that I'm very sensitive. Ever since everything that we've been through, I'm very sensitive to how you feel. And I'm very sensitive to making sure that you're taken care of. And especially at that point in time, because of everything that you had just walked, going through all the surgeries and everything, and me being put into a caretaker mode for a little while. Because as you said, there was a lot of things you couldn't do on your own. And so I was there to fulfill that role for you. And I feel in that way that did draw us closer to each other than even we were before that happened.
Yeah.
And so everything that happened to you, I took personally. And so when this happened, I was taking that personally also, but then at the same time, that was affecting me. And so there was a point there where I had to pray and ask God, I need you to help me through this because, is this going to be the rest of our life? Is this what we have to look forward to the rest of our life, or is this going to get better? Is it going to change? And we both know, looking at statistics and looking at other people that walk through those types of situations, that usually it doesn't get better unless you manually make something happen. It doesn't, that healing does not come typically unless God gives you the healing. And so therefore you as a couple have to take steps to try to accommodate and start trying to work your way through. So all these situations that we'd already been through, you think you've been through everything and you think you've experienced every possible problem you could ever have. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's something new. It's like, now I got something else to navigate. Did you worry at any time when you were going through that? Did you worry that you were going to lose me?
Or
how did you feel about that?
I think that I had I think because my body had been through so much, I honestly can't say that I wondered if you were going to turn to something. I don't think, never did it cross my mind that you would go to somebody physically, but it made me at times wonder if it would turn to like porn or something because of that. Because I was fighting my own battles of trying to figure out, this is the new body I have. How do I handle this? It's nothing what I'm used to. I can't make you happy. And at that time, I think I just had so many things going on that I don't know that I processed that. I would say that at times I did worry about that.
So once we started moving forward and we started trying to navigate through this, what are some steps that you finally started having to take to try to not necessarily correct the situation, but try to move forward and make it better to the point that you could do the best you could in the situation?
Well, as you said earlier, you had to pray and have God help you with that. I think that was a lot of it for my mindset, is praying that God help me accept the body that is now given to me. Help me do the things I once did, but do it better in your timing, obviously, but to also open your heart to be understanding, which I knew you were, but to ease my mind that it was okay, And I think because of that and the fact that I really started praying and really seeking God at that time about it, it became easier for me. And, my mind wasn't in 20 million different spots. And I found myself, hey, let's have sex, No, it definitely wasn't. It was one every 6 months, it wasn't, but it was a thought. And before that, there wasn't ever a thought. I was like, heck no, but I think the prayer really helped me a lot with that.
Yeah. And so, with me being a guy, and most guys are all the same, they like to say we have a one-track mind. That's not really true in my instance anyway. But one thing that I really feel like I had to do to move forward in this is I did have to let God work through the whole thing to accommodate the situation in my mind to help me, navigate it the way that I needed to make sure that you felt secure. Because I think one of the things I was worried about, I didn't want you to start feeling insecure in our relationship or, worried about what I'm doing or not going to do to fill in the gaps and all that kind of thing. Because that stuff did cross my mind as well. And, I understood the problem, which I used to be a medic. I was a medic for about 6 years. And so I was around a lot of medical stuff. And so I probably had a little bit better understanding of some of the things you were going through, probably more so than the average person. And so I knew that with situations that come along medically, sometimes you have to adjust and you have to accommodate and you have to do the best that you can to try to work around that situation and still make it work for each person. And so I feel like God gave me a grace to be able to do that. I feel that ever since that time up till now, God has made it happen to where between the two of us, that for the most part, neither one of us have ever lacked. I feel like we've both have been satisfied in all areas in our relationship. And I do attribute a lot of that to God.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that the love that we have for each other, I think that was an anchor really too, because we had already been through so much before. We'd already almost been divorced. We knew what it was like to hurt each other really bad and say really bad things about each other. And, by the time that your sickness took place and everything that happened, I feel like that you and I had more of a solid foundation underneath us.
Yes.
That we had already built our relationship on, that this was just another minor setback.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I looked at it. And in the long run, God has worked that out. Now, we understand not every couple out there is going to have an end result like you and I. I understand that completely. And I think, as far as from my side of it, the advice that I would give to you guys out there, if you're walking through something like this where, your spouse has been through a situation that has really affected the intimacy side, the sexual drive and those kinds of things in your relationship, and you're really struggling with that, my first thing to say is you need to take that to God.
Yep.
Secondly, you need to communicate. You have to talk to your spouse, and you guys have to be open with your communication on all levels of anything that you're feeling, the things that you're going through, because if you're not careful, and I think, Michelle can vouch for this, unless I talk to her, unless I talk to you and tell you what's going on, you're not going to know if I'm having a problem.
Right.
And if I act like everything's okay, but it's not really okay, you're going to think it's okay because I'm not saying anything. And then this whole time, I would be sitting here feeling worse and worse about the situation, maybe getting more frustrated, more aggravated.
And I think that's an opportunity for the enemy.
It is. And so that communication is so important.
Yeah.
And between the two, there's plenty of things out there to help with a situation like that.
And I can remember us talking about it. Like we would lay in bed and we would just talk about it. Honestly, it's like, I would like to have this tonight, but I know that, you can't. And we would just sit there and talk about it. I know it sounds like the weirdest thing, but the communication, I think, helped us. It grew us together. And it also, the fact that we are both wanting what God had for us, and we were willing to both walk it slowly. Mm-hmm. And, God's going to be there through it all with you. Yeah. And, he's helping you in different ways as he was helping me in different ways. And then he was helping us together in both ways.
Yeah. And so if this is a female that's having this issue, what would you tell to her as far as staying that course and taking care of her problems, because this is a psychological thing as well for the person that's going through the sickness and the surgeries, that's having the life change. That is a mind game.
It is.
I mean, there's no other way to describe that, right? Because that starts a battle in your mind.
Absolutely.
And that trickles out and starts messing with your marriage.
I think that's also when I've learned to, though, keep your thoughts about all good things, and if it's not a good thing and it's not from God, you need to rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Plead the blood over it. I mean, I've learned that a lot of times because my mind will go in 20 million different places, but I would definitely tell you, one, even though you may change from what's happened, you are still a daughter of the Most High King. And remember, he knew what was going to happen to you before it happened. Mm-hmm. And that's where, I struggled with loving my body to begin with. And so when all that happened, it changed me drastically and more emotional, in a lot of ways. But God changed my heart. He also changed my mind. And when I say he changed my mind, it's up to me whether to have good thoughts. I can allow those thoughts to come in my mind that are not good, and it would ruin our moment, and it would ruin everything about what we were trying to talk about or anything. So I would tell you to definitely make sure you guard your thoughts and, just remember there was a purpose for what you walk through.
Yeah.
And that's, when I first opened it up, that God has a purpose for your pain and a reason for your struggle, and a reward for your faithfulness. I mean, and I look at us now of what we've walked. And guys, I'm telling you, my husband's the best male nurse I've ever seen. And going from a male nurse to still being my husband to walking through this season of life, he never really thought about himself. Now, you may have, and you didn't tell me about it. I mean, I know you were fighting some stuff and you were praying, but you always were attentive to me and made sure that I've been taken care of.
Yeah.
And still to this day, you're that way.
Yeah. And there is also help out there, therapist and all that kind of thing. We don't want to downplay any of that either.
Right.
Because obviously this is a biblical-based podcast. So we're always obviously going to, put God in things first. We always want to pray about things and ask God for direction in anything that happens within our lives, our marriages and whatever. But God also allows us to use the medical community.
Yes.
And so whatever it takes, just don't let Satan get a foothold in your marriage and allow anything that happens between the two of you to tear that apart. I think that's probably our main point that we want to make with this episode. And, because we do know people that is walking what Michelle's walked and is walking what I'm walking, whether if it's on either side, because the guys go through surgery sometimes too that causes issues and causes problems, cancer. There's different things that can take place. But we just want you to know you're not alone.
Right.
There's other people out there walking that same walk, and they're having to navigate all of those issues just like you are. And every situation's different. We totally understand that. The walk that Michelle and I have walked is probably completely different than some of you out there that's listening that may be walking through this as well right now. But the end result has to be the same. If you're married with your spouses, you have to bring God into it and allow him to work through both of you and figure out, okay, so if we have limitations here, here, and here, then how do we overcome that and move past all of that and still make this marriage work?
Yeah. Still
keep us happy, keep that happiness that's there, and allow us to be the happily married couple that God wants us to be. And God will help you do that. And he really will.
I'm just going to say this because you know me and I just throw things out there. A marriage doesn't have to be all about sex.
Mm-hmm.
You
just broke every guy's heart.
I know. I'm sorry. But sometimes in seasons, just wrapping your arms around the other person and just holding them tightly and telling them you love them means more than anything.
Yep.
And I'm so thankful Dan was okay with that because honestly, that's my favorite thing. It may not be every man's, but you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. It's a season. And, make sure that your wife or your husband, whoever it may be, knows that they're loved no matter what it is and what you used to do that you can't do now. Just love on them. Yeah. Know that you're there to support them and pray together about it.
Yep. Always remember that spouse that had to have you're the one that had the surgeries. You didn't ask for that. That was not something that you ever saw in your future. You didn't see yourself walking through that someday. And I just hate it when I see one couple will go through a traumatic situation that causes a complete life change, which interrupts the life of the other spouse, upsets them, they get frustrated, and the first thing they want to do is they just want to pack their bags up and leave because it's not the same as it was before. That's not fair to the other spouse. That spouse that's going through all of that needs more support at that time from their spouse than they've ever needed it. And they need to feel they're already going through problems and situations in their body that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And they need to know that they need to feel like they're loved by somebody. Yeah. That through thick and thin, sickness and poor and all that stuff that we say when we get married, that's where it puts your feet to the fire.
Yeah. And I've told Dan that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've fought them all, and to this day, even if we had to go before another season, God would be walking right there with us, and we would take it day by day.
Yep. As we talked about in some of our episodes, that marriage covenant is a serious thing. And be forewarned, if you say that covenant before your spouse and you get married and you both take that vow, that someday you may get called on it and you may have to walk your talk. And so just be prepared for that, because that is a a vow that you take in marriage that you have to take seriously.
Yeah.
Because when stuff like this happens, it's going to really show what you're made out of.
And you, to this day, there's still things that, like with my lymphedema, I mean, I can't be like repetition with my right arm. I can't do anything. So he gets to paint sometimes for me, and he just loves it.
Yeah, it creates more work.
And that's just something that is going forward in the future. There are things that he has stepped in that I can't do anymore. Yeah. And, he doesn't ever gripe about it except for painting. He hates painting.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing.
But he does it. But, those are the things that being there for that spouse and reassuring them that, hey, I'm in it with you. No matter what, no matter what costs, I'm right here with you.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to call it good on that one. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? No. I do want to say that, if you're a couple out there and you're struggling with something like this and you want someone to walk alongside you in prayer and just to help you guys, try to get through things or whatever, you can reach out to us. There's a form on the website that you can fill out and send in, or you can email Daniel@connectingthegap.net. That's on the website as well. We'd be more than happy to put you on our prayer list and to pray for you. And maybe if you're going through an issue and you're wanting some advice, you can throw the question at us, and we'll see if we can answer it for you, and maybe try to give you some good advice that maybe something that we've been through and what's helped us, because we really kind of had to navigate this on our own.
Yeah, because we
didn't have anybody that's been through this before us necessarily.
And to be honest, a lot of people don't talk about stuff like this.
No, they don't.
And I think, since doing the podcast, as we find out other things from people, it's like, I wish they would have shared that, because that would have helped us tremendously, and, whether it may be just a little tidbit or something, I mean, it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, it always helps to know that somebody's walked that walk already, and how did they get through it?
Yeah.
I mean, that just helps a lot for people that are newly going through things like that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week. I do want to thank God for where he's brought Michelle and I to in this point in our marriage and this point in our life. And I think, we hate the things that we walk through sometimes, it's just not something we would ask for. And if we had the chance to go back and change it and do it all differently, a lot of us would do that with a lot of things that happen in our life. But as it goes, life moves forward, life moves on, and you have to live with the things that happen, and you have to try to just use those to the best that you can and make something good out of those with the help of God. And so at this point in our life, with the things that we've been through, we just hope that the stories that we can share and the things that we can talk about with those, that it would just help someone out there of you guys that are listening. So with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this week's episode. So if you want to continue to catch our episodes, make sure you subscribe to our platform. That's how you'll know when new episodes are coming out. And again, I'm Daniel Moore, and my wife Michelle, she's been sitting here with us this week and helping. This was her story today. So hope you guys got something from that. This show really wouldn't be possible without you. If you're a fan of the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, or if you'd like to help us out with a few seconds, just give us a 5-star click, and please subscribe to us on your favorite platform. And the links for all of those are in our show notes. Well, that's all for this week, and we pray that your marriage is stronger and your walk with God is closer after this episode. This is an extension of Connecting the Gap Ministries. We pray that y'all have a blessed week.
You've been listening to Connecting the Gap podcast. In this world, there are many disconnects that cause chaos in our lives. This podcast is birthed from the desire to share hope and restoration of the power of the gospel by being transparent and open in our biblical walk with God. Each week, we take a few moments as we navigate God's word and peer into other people's testimonies and encourage each other to connect the gap. We upload a new audio podcast every Thursday and a video version of it on YouTube and Rumble. We are also on the Christian podcasting app, Edify. You can subscribe to our podcast on many of the available podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and more. We are also available on your Alexa-enabled devices. If you would like to contact our ministry for any reason, visit our contact page and send us a message. We hope you are blessed by this ministry. This is a production of Connecting the Gap Ministries.